Imagine you are right in the middle of a really complex task at work.
Right, like typing a high-stakes email or something.
Exactly. You're typing this email, you are mid-sentence, forming a crucial thought, and suddenly your brain just, well, it just stops.
You completely freeze.
Yeah, you freeze. You completely forget what point you were trying to make, or you forget how to spell a totally simple word like schedule.
Or you walk into the break room to grab a file and you just stand there staring at the coffee machine.
Right. With absolutely no idea why you're even in that room.
It is, it's incredibly disorienting. And for many people, especially when it happens at work where they're usually highly competent, it borders on terrifying.
Boy, I bet.
Yeah, I mean, you start to question your own fundamental capability.
Well, if you are nodding along to this scenario right now, the very first thing we need to establish is that you are not going crazy.
Absolutely not.
You're not losing your mind, and you are far from alone. So, welcome to this deep dive. Our mission today is unpacking a massive stack of sources. We're looking at clinical research from University College London, workplace guidelines from ACAS and the CIPD, and a ton of medical insights.
It's a lot of ground to cover.
It is, and we're taking all of this data to decode exactly how to manage menopausal brain fog, memory issues, and, concentration at work.
Because what we're looking at is a natural, universal biological transition. But it's a transition that is currently colliding head-on with the relentless demands of modern professional life.
Which is a brutal combination.
It really is. So the goal today is to give you a clear understanding of the mechanics, like what is actually happening, along with practical tools to protect your cognitive capacity.
Okay, so before we get into the workplace strategies, we really have to look under the hood. We have to understand the biology of the fog.
Right, the actual mechanisms.
Yeah, because for a long time, the mainstream narrative has framed menopause almost exclusively around, like, reproductive hormones and physical symptoms, right? Like hot flushes.
Yeah, exactly.
But the research, particularly the work from Dr. Lisa Mosconi that's highlighted in our sources, it requires a complete reframing of how we view estrogen. I mean, it's not just a reproductive hormone.
Not at all. Estrogen is actually the master regulator of the female brain.
The master regulator. That sounds intense.
It is. It plays a foundational role in how neurons generate energy. To function, your brain obviously needs fuel, and its primary fuel source is glucose.
Right, sugar, basically.
Exactly. And estrogen essentially acts as the catalyst. It pushes your neurons to burn that glucose effectively.
Okay, so as estrogen levels start to wildly fluctuate and then eventually drop off during perimenopause and menopause, your brain is experiencing a temporary but pretty significant decline in glucose metabolism.
You've got it. The brain is literally becoming less efficient at using its main energy source.
Wow. So it's basically running on fumes.
That's the core of the issue right there. You're experiencing a temporary energy crisis in the brain.
Which explains so much.
Right. Because when there is less energy available for demanding cognitive tasks like sustained focus or rapid attention switching or word retrieval, you get that tip of the tongue phenomenon.
Oh, I hate that feeling.
We all do. You know the noun you want to use, but the neural pathway required to fetch it, it simply doesn't have the metabolic juice to retrieve it quickly.
And it's a compounding issue, isn't it? Because the sources point out that progesterone is dropping right alongside estrogen.
Yes, and progesterone plays a massive role in regulating the brain's internal volume.
The volume. What do you mean by that?
Well, normally progesterone converts into a neurosteroid called allopregnanolone, or allo for short.
Okay, allo.
And allo is crucial because it modulates the brain's GABA system. To break that down simply, your brain essentially has an accelerator pedal and a brake pedal.
Right.
The GABA system is the brake pedal. It's the inhibitory network that filters out unnecessary background distractions, dampens anxiety, and, just keeps your baseline cognitive state calm.
Oh, I see. So when progesterone drops, the supply of allo drops, meaning the brain effectively loses its brakes.
Exactly. Without that strong inhibitory system, everything just feels noisier.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah, the brain is already struggling with a glucose energy deficit, and now it has to spend even more of that limited energy trying to filter out sensory and emotional static.
So that's the physiological reason behind feeling like more irritable or easily distracted or just overwhelmed by environments that used to be super easy to navigate.
That's precisely it. And Dr. Jolene Brighton's research offers an analogy that makes perfect sense of this dual mechanism.
Oh, I love this analogy. The smartphone one, right?
Yes. Experiencing menopause brain fog is exactly like your brain undergoing a major smartphone iOS software update.
Right, so the hardware, your actual brain is completely intact. It's
Yeah.
totally fine.
Completely fine, but the device is lagging. You're staring at that spinning wheel on the screen while the background operating system rewires itself to function on a completely new hormonal baseline.
And during that biological update, it takes up an enormous amount of processing power just to run the transition itself.
Right. Consequently, the apps you rely on for daily tasks, your short-term memory, your focus, your processing speed, they start glitching because they just don't have enough allocated RAM to run smoothly.
Wow. And then, as if that wasn't enough, we add the sleep factor into the mix, which basically turns a laggy system into a crashing one.
Oh, absolutely. Sleep is the kicker.
Because we generally think of hot flushes and night sweats as just, uncomfortable physical symptoms that wake you up. You're hot, you're sweaty.
Right. But the neurological impact of a hot flush goes so much deeper than just tossing and turning. The sources describe these as microarousals.
Microarousals.
Yeah. A hot flush triggers a physiological alarm bell that pulls your brain out of its sleep cycle even if you don't fully wake up and open your eyes.
So you might not even remember waking up.
Exactly. But these microarousals slice up your slow-wave deep sleep and your REM sleep.
Which is catastrophic for memory, right?
Right.
Because deep sleep is the specific phase where the brain does its nightly housekeeping.
Think of deep sleep as the brain's trash collection and filing system.
Okay, I like that visual.
It's the period where the glymphatic system flushes out the metabolic waste that builds up during the day. And it's the exact window where the brain glues short-term information into long-term memories.
So if your sleep architecture is being fragmented by temperature spikes night after night,
the trash doesn't get taken out, the memories don't get filed, and your cognitive clarity the next day is severely compromised.
it really is a biological perfect storm. I mean, you have an energy deficit from the estrogen drop, a loss of filtering capacity from the progesterone drop, and a totally fragmented waste clearance system from the sleep disruption.
It's a lot for the body to handle.
It is. However, there is a really crucial distinction we need to make here. Because of these memory slips, the sources note that many people secretly fear they're developing early-onset dementia.
It's a very common fear, and honestly a terrifying one for patients, but the mechanisms are entirely different.
Right.
Dementia fundamentally damages memory storage and spatial navigation. Someone experiencing dementia might forget the route to a house they've lived in for 20 years or lose the memory of an event entirely.
But menopause brain fog doesn't do that.
No, menopause brain fog does not destroy the memories. It impairs attention, processing speed, and learning efficiency.
Right, so to use an office analogy, the files are still perfectly safe inside the cabinet.
Exactly. The issue is that the filing clerk is exhausted, working with the lights dimmed, and moving really slowly to retrieve them.
That distinction is so vital. The files are safe. But the reality is, we have to look at what happens when this exhausting neurological software update collides with the demands of a modern workday.
And that's where the workplace friction really begins.
Yeah, because women over 50 are the fastest growing demographic in the workforce in many countries. And in the UK, for instance, the average age of menopause is 51.
Meaning this profound biological shift is hitting people right at the absolute peak of their professional careers.
Right. This is the stage where individuals are managing complex teams, they're overseeing large budgets, and operating at the height of their technical expertise.
And the statistics from the University College London research and the CIPD, they paint a stark picture. 2/3 of menopausal women report experiencing cognitive difficulties.
2/3, that's massive.
It gets worse. Of those, 90% state that these symptoms actively negatively impact their work.
90%.
Yeah, it creates this devastating erosion of professional confidence. We're looking at a demographic where thousands of highly skilled individuals are reducing their working hours, stepping back from leadership roles, or just leaving the workforce entirely because the cognitive load becomes unsustainable.
There's actually a real-life anecdote in the sources from the University of Oxford that captures this perfectly.
Oh, the executive assistant story.
Yes. She described feeling as though her body was hijacked by goblins. She was managing heavy bleeding, extreme fatigue, and brain fog so profound that one morning she accidentally locked her cycling equipment safely inside her garage, but left her actual expensive bicycle sitting out on the street.
And on the surface, that sounds like a mildly amusing lapse in concentration. But when you examine the psychological weight of that moment, it is crushing.
It is. Because if you're an executive assistant whose entire professional value is tied to your immaculate attention to detail, your ability to organize schedules, and your, flawless execution of complex logistics, locking your bike outside is terrifying.
Absolutely. You arrive at the office thinking, if I can't even manage my commute, how am I supposed to manage the CEO's itinerary?
And that leads directly to masking, doesn't it?
It does. Instead of asking for support, people burn twice as much cognitive energy trying to hide the struggle, which obviously only depletes their brain's battery faster.
Okay, let's look at this from a manager's perspective, though.
Yeah.
I have to push back a little. If an employee is genuinely struggling with processing speed, making uncharacteristic errors, or having trouble retaining new information, aren't employers somewhat justified in treating that as a performance issue? I mean, if the output drops, the output drops.
It's a fair question, and it really speaks to how workplaces measure value. However, treating this as a standard performance issue confuses a temporary drop in efficiency with a permanent loss of capability.
That's a good point.
An employer who institutes a punitive performance plan for menopause-related brain fog is essentially firing a top-tier software engineer because their computer is taking 20 minutes to install an update.
Wow. Yeah, that puts it into perspective.
It's just a short-sighted management strategy.
Yeah.
The capability is entirely intact. The environment and the workflow simply need adjusting during the transition.
And the medical field hasn't historically helped this workplace dynamic either. The sources mention a survey showing 66% of women were wrongly offered antidepressants for their menopause symptoms.
Yes. Doctors are trained to look for mood disorders. So when a middle-aged woman presents with brain fog, anxiety, and low motivation, she's frequently misdiagnosed with clinical depression or burnout.
Because the symptoms overlap significantly on a superficial level.
Exactly. But prescribing an antidepressant for an estrogen-driven glucose deficit is attacking the entirely wrong mechanism. It leaves the patient feeling unheard and fundamentally unsupported.
Which just reinforces the workplace stigma that they're just not coping well.
Precisely.
Well, since corporate structures and medical paradigms are so slow to change, let's pivot to immediate personal interventions. How can you, the listener, hack your own focus and protect your cognitive capacity right now?
The most critical intervention is abandoning the myth of multitasking.
Which, let's be honest, we all know multitasking is mostly a myth anyway, it's just rapid task switching. But why is it so specifically catastrophic during this biological transition?
Because rapid task switching relies entirely on the brain's executive function, which is localized in the prefrontal cortex. And the prefrontal cortex is incredibly energy hungry.
Back to the energy crisis.
Right. When you try to answer an email, monitor a Zoom chat, and check a spreadsheet simultaneously, you are demanding peak glucose metabolism from a system that we already established is suffering from an estrogen-driven energy shortage.
You're demanding a massive amount of RAM that your brain simply does not have available right now.
Exactly. So the recommended solution in the literature is rigid, single tasking through focus strengths.
What does that look like in practice?
You block out 25 minutes dedicated to one specific task. You eliminate the sensory noise, turn off the notification pings, close the extra browser tabs, put your phone in a drawer.
By lowering the environmental demands, you allow your brain to allocate 100% of its available glucose to that single cognitive function. That ties directly into another strategy the sources emphasize heavily: utilizing an external brain.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I want to explore how to practically implement it. It really requires a shift in ego.
It definitely does.
Because when you're used to keeping an entire department's operations in your head, relying on a password manager or setting calendar alerts for basic tasks, it can feel like a concession of defeat.
But it's the exact opposite of defeat. It's strategic cognitive offloading.
Strategic cognitive offloading. I like that.
If your working memory is currently compromised by a biological software update, storing a complex password or the time of a 2 p.m. meeting in your head is just a waste of metabolic energy.
Right. A practical implementation of this is an executive using a tool like OneNote or a dedicated physical notebook as a strict cognitive ramp.
Yes, write it down immediately.
Before they leave a meeting, they immediately write down the 3 specific deliverables they are responsible for, instead of trusting their future self to remember them.
Or creating cheat sheets for complex medication dosages if they're a nurse, or standard operating procedures for software they use infrequently.
You are plugging your mind into an external hard drive to free up your internal RAM for actual problem solving and critical thinking.
Moving from digital architecture to physical fuel, Dr. Jolene Brighton's research highlights a very specific nutritional strategy called the 30-30 habit.
Yes, this involves consuming 30 grams of protein at breakfast, followed by 30 minutes of movement, such as a brisk walk. Let's break down the mechanics of that. How does eating protein and walking clear a neurological fog?
It all goes back to glucose metabolism again. When the menopausal brain struggles to metabolize energy efficiently, it becomes incredibly sensitive to blood sugar fluctuations.
Okay.
If your breakfast is high in refined carbohydrates or sugars like a pastry or sugary cereal, your blood sugar spikes and then dramatically crashes.
And that crash creates metabolic noise, exacerbating the brain fog and triggering a stress response.
Exactly. Protein, on the other hand, breaks down slowly. It provides a steady, sustained release of fuel over several hours.
And the 30 minutes of movement acts as a vascular pump.
Yes, it increases blood flow and delivers fresh oxygen directly to the brain tissues.
So when you combine that stabilizing habit with a Mediterranean or MIND diet, which prioritizes healthy fats, antioxidants, and complex carbohydrates, you are giving your brain the highest quality, most stable fuel source possible to navigate the transition.
That's right.
So we have individual strategies: single tasking, offloading working memory to an external brain, and stabilizing blood sugar with protein. These are really powerful tools. But navigating a 40-hour workweek through a neurological transition shouldn't rely solely on individual biohacking.
No, it shouldn't. The burden can't just be on the individual.
Exactly. Let's look at the structural support side. What should organizations actually be doing?
Organizations like ACS and the Society of Occupational Medicine are issuing clear, actionable guidelines. And the core takeaway is that effective accommodations rarely require massive financial investment.
They're usually simple environmental tweaks.
Very simple. For example, providing a desk fan, or allowing an employee to move their workstation near a window that opens so they can regulate their ambient temperature.
Adjusting uniform policies is another major one mentioned. Allowing employees to wear breathable, layered clothing instead of restrictive synthetic materials can prevent a minor temperature fluctuation from becoming a full-blown hot flush.
Yes, and ensuring access to cold drinking water at all times is another foundational requirement.
But the most impactful structural change seems to revolve around time. Flexible start times are highlighted repeatedly in the source material.
Yeah, this is huge. If someone's sleep architecture has been destroyed by microarousals until 4 a.m., forcing them to be at their desk at 8 a.m. guarantees a day of zero productivity.
Right. Allowing them to start at 10 a.m. means they might capture an extra cycle of restorative sleep. The employer gets a focused, functional worker instead of someone staring blankly at a screen.
It is a mutually beneficial arrangement based on physiological reality. We also need to look at therapeutic tools. The sources strongly advocate for cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, as a primary intervention for menopause symptoms.
Okay, I have to ask about the mechanics of this because it sounds totally counterintuitive. Wait, how does reframing your thoughts or doing paced breathing actually help a physical, biological hot flush in the middle of a high-stakes board meeting? I mean, you cannot outthink a sudden, massive spike in body temperature.
You are absolutely correct. CBT does not stop the physiological trigger. The mechanism behind a hot flush is a hypothalamic temperature misread.
A misread.
Yeah, the hypothalamus is your brain's internal thermostat. As estrogen drops, that thermostat glitches. It misinterprets a perfectly comfortable 70-degree room as a 100-degree furnace, and it triggers a massive immediate cooling response, intense sweating and vasodilation.
Okay, so CBT does not fix the broken thermostat.
No, it doesn't.
What does it fix then?
It halts the secondary anxiety spiral. When a hot flush hits while you are presenting in a meeting, your brain's alarm system goes off. You panic. You think, everyone is staring at me. I look unprofessional. I'm visibly sweating.
Right.
That panic triggers your sympathetic nervous system to dump cortisol and adrenaline into your bloodstream. Processing that fear response consumes an enormous amount of cognitive energy, leaving absolutely nothing left for the presentation itself.
So, by using a CBT technique like paced breathing, inhaling for a count of 4 and exhaling for a count of 6, you're mechanically intervening in that process.
Exactly. You are manually engaging the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the body's rest and digest mode. You acknowledge the physical flush, you accept that the thermostat has glitched and the heat will pass, but you prevent the cortisol dump.
Oh, wow. So by preventing the panic, you preserve your cognitive energy, allowing you to actually maintain your train of thought and continue the meeting.
It is a brilliant strategy to protect your remaining processing power.
That makes total sense. Now, Beyond behavioral tools, the sources also discuss medical routes. And while we are strictly analyzing the research here and not providing medical advice, what mechanisms are women exploring with their healthcare providers?
Well, the most prominent medical route is hormone replacement therapy, or HRT.
Right.
By supplementing the declining levels of estrogen and progesterone, HRT addresses the root biological cause of the hot flushes and the sleep disruption. For many, restoring that hormonal baseline leads to a significant, rapid improvement in cognitive clarity.
Though the data regarding HRT's effectiveness, specifically and solely for brain fog in the absence of other symptoms, is more nuanced, right?
Yes, and it's a highly individualized medical decision.
The research also highlights several non-hormonal supplements that target specific cognitive pathways.
Yes, the mechanisms here are actually fascinating. Supplements like citicoline are gaining a lot of attention. Yeah. Citicoline helps synthesize phosphatidylcholine, which is a major structural component of brain cell membranes. If the brain is undergoing a neurological rewiring, providing it with the physical building blocks to maintain the structural integrity of its neurons can support attention and focus.
The sources also mention magnesium, which helps regulate neurotransmitters involved in sleep architecture, vitamin D for overall neuroprotection, and saffron, which has demonstrated mechanisms for supporting mood and managing stress.
The point is, there is a comprehensive menu of interventions. Suffering through the fog in silence is not a biological mandate.
Definitely not. But among all the clinical interventions, the nutritional habits, and the workplace policies we've discussed, there's one specific finding from the University College London researchers that stands out as the most immediately transformative.
Oh, yes. The profound impact of validation.
Yes, validation.
The research indicates that simply validating a person's subjective experience of brain fog builds immense psychological resilience.
It's so simple, yet so powerful.
When a manager, a colleague, or a doctor looks at you and says, "I believe you, this transition is real, the cognitive impact is real, and it is not a reflection of your underlying intelligence," it changes the entire dynamic.
It instantly removes the massive cognitive burden of masking. If you operate in a psychologically safe environment where you don't have to waste your limited brain energy pretending you aren't struggling, you can allocate that energy toward actually executing your job.
Exactly. Menopause brain fog is a temporary decrease in metabolic efficiency. It's not a permanent decrease in your intellectual capacity.
Your brilliant, capable brain is entirely intact. It's merely adapting to a new biological environment.
And for the vast majority of individuals, the research shows that once the hormonal baseline stabilizes, the fog lifts and the clarity fully returns.
Before we wrap up, there's a truly fascinating paradox highlighted by researchers from Monash University and UCL that we want to leave you with.
It's a great point to ponder.
They noted that the primary, most disruptive symptom of brain fog is inherently a subjective experience. It is the internal sensation of, my brain feels off today, I'm moving through molasses.
Right. Yet, both clinical trials and corporate performance structures almost exclusively demand objective metrics, like standardized memory tests or KPI trackers, to prove that a struggle is real and worthy of accommodation.
Which exposes a significant flaw in how our institutions assess human well-being and productivity. Because we already accept subjective self-reporting as a valid diagnostic tool for conditions like depression, anxiety, and chronic pain.
Exactly.
Right. So if the medical community and the corporate world evolved to truly validate our subjective experiences of our own cognitive health, if a workplace just trusted its employees when they simply said, my cognitive capacity is lagging today, I need to adjust my workflow to be effective, how might that fundamentally transform the way we approach productivity, compassion, and sustainable well-being across all ages and stages in the workforce?
It represents a massive paradigm shift. It moves the corporate culture from a demand for objective proof of struggle to a baseline of trust and proactive support.
It is a shift we desperately need. So the next time you find yourself mid-email, staring blankly at a blinking cursor, or standing in the break room wondering why on earth you walked in there, take a deep breath.
Inhale for a count of 4, exhale for a count of 6.
Your brain is not broken. It is just running a complex update. Give yourself the grace to let it process. Keep questioning, keep learning, and thank you for joining us on this deep dive.